Laura Ingraham has built her career on being sharp, unflappable, and cutting down her guests with precision. But on this particular night, she found herself face to face with Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, and what was supposed to be another easy takedown turned into a moment that went viral for all the wrong reasons. The show started out the way it usually does. Laura leaned in, armed with talking points, a smirk, and a few carefully worded traps she thought would corner her guest. She asked the kind of questions designed not to get answers but to provoke mistakes, the type of exchanges she could clip and play back later as proof of her dominance. But this time, things didn't go according to plan, when Laura threw her first jab, implying that Crockett's progressive ideas were out of touch with real Americans. She expected hesitation, maybe a defensive scramble. Instead, Crockett didn't flinch. She let the silence hang for just a beat, looked Laura straight in the eye, and then delivered a response so sharp and so grounded in reality that the studio atmosphere shifted instantly. Laura, the people I represent aren't sitting around, worried about whether their values line up with cable news narratives. They're worried about whether they can pay rent, whether their kids can see a doctor, whether they're going to survive another round of layoffs. If fighting for them is out of touch, then maybe the real question is, out of touch with whom? The air went heavy. Viewers could feel it through the screen. And for the first time that night, Laura's practiced confidence faltered. She tried to brush it off with a smirk, but the damage was done. That moment set the tone for what would become one of the most lopsided interviews in recent memory. The more Laura pressed, the worse it got. She leaned on her usual tactics, interruptions, leading questions, and sarcastic asides meant to throw her opponent off balance. But Crockett never lost her composure. She didn't meet fire with fire, she met it with calm, deliberate precision. Every answer was clear. Every rebuttal was rooted in facts and lived experience, and the contrast was brutal. One of the biggest turning points came when Laura went in for what she clearly thought was a winning line. So, Congresswoman, are you saying Americans should just pay higher taxes so Washington can hand out freebies? Was the kind of soundbite designed for Laura's audience, a neat little box she could shove Crockett into? But Crockett dismantled it in seconds. What I'm saying, Laura, is that Americans already pay the price. They pay it when billionaires dodge taxes, when corporations move jobs overseas, when families are forced into bankruptcy because of medical bills. If fairness is what you call a freebie, then maybe it's time we redefine what responsibility looks like. Delivery was flawless, calm, unshaken, devastating. Social media lit up almost immediately. Clips of that exchange circulated on Twitter with captions like Crockett schools Ingraham in under 30 seconds. It wasn't just a good answer. It was a moment. The kind of TV that people remember. From there, it only spiraled further out of Laura's control. She tried to interrupt, but now her interruptions looked desperate. She tried to steer the conversation away, but Crockett kept pulling it back. And every time Laura raised her voice or leaned harder into sarcasm, Crockett's measured tone made her look smaller by comparison. At one point, Laura accused her of just parroting Democratic talking points. Crockett didn't miss a beat. The difference between us, Laura, is that I don't need talking points. I've seen families struggle to pay rent. I've sat across from people drowning in medical debt. I know these issues because I live with them. I work with them. I fight for them. It's not a script, that's reality. That line landed like a punch. The audience watching at home could see it. Authenticity versus performance. Crockett was speaking from lived experience, while Laura was clinging to rehearsed jabs. And in a live interview, authenticity always wins. Even the panelists brought in to back Laura up seemed to hesitate. One tried to jump in, throwing out a statistic meant to undercut Crockett's argument. But Crockett turned it around with her own facts, calmly dismantling the claim before pivoting right back to Laura. By then, the balance of power had completely flipped. This wasn't Laura interrogating her guest anymore. Was Crockett exposing Laura, her tactics, and the hollowness behind them? By the halfway mark, Laura wasn't running the interview. She was just trying to get through it. You could see the tension in her face, the sharpness of her tone rising as she fought to recover ground she'd already lost. And all the while, Crockett stayed calm, stayed sharp, and stayed in control. The final blow came near the end. Laura, clearly frustrated, tried one last time to dismiss Crockett's points as just partisan noise. Crockett leaned in slightly, lowered her voice just enough to force attention, and delivered the line that sealed the interview. You call it noise because you don't want to hear it? But for the people living these realities, it's not noise, it's survival. And no, amount of spin will change that. That was it, was the mic drop. The show went to commercial shortly after, but by then the internet had already decided who won. Within hours, clips were everywhere. On TikTok, on Twitter, on YouTube, Crockett's words were being replayed, remixed, and celebrated. What was supposed to be Laura Ingraham's platform had turned into Jasmine Crockett's stage, and the fallout was brutal. Laura's critics pounced, highlighting the interview as proof that she was losing her edge. Even some of her supporters admitted she looked cornered. Meanwhile, Crockett's star power shot up overnight. She gained thousands of new followers, trended across platforms, and became the subject of headlines praising her composure and clarity. The lesson was clear. In an era where every moment can be clipped and shared, authenticity and composure matter more than theatrics. Laura Ingraham had walked into that interview expecting to humiliate Jasmine Crockett. Instead, she walked out as the one humiliated, while Crockett walked out as a rising star who had just turned a hostile interview into a defining moment. When people ask why this clip exploded, the answer isn't complicated. It wasn't just the clash of two strong personalities. It was the way Crockett took the playbook of a seasoned TV host and flipped it back on her, calmly, confidently, and devastatingly. That's why this moment will be remembered not as a victory for Laura Ingraham, but as the night Jasmine. Crockett turned the tables and left her opponents speechless. If you enjoyed this breakdown and want to see more stories where the tables get turned and the underdog comes out on top, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Drop a comment with your thoughts on who came out looking stronger in this exchange. Share this video with someone who loves seeing power dynamics. Flip on live television, because let's be honest, we don't see moments like this often. And when we do, they remind us why live TV is scripted, unpredictable. Ross still has the power to shake the conversation.